great with Traci joining us from Las Vegas, man. Come on. What's up, Traci? How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Great, man. It's so awesome to see you. Thank you for being available early. You rock.
Hey, I like to be on time for everything.
You're awesome. So we were talking a little bit earlier, and you're actually based out of Las Vegas.
Right.
That's awesome. And you told me earlier there was actually a reason that you moved to Las Vegas, and part of it was because of breast cancer, was it not?
Well, we moved because of my husband's work, and we also moved because of the health benefits of the weather down here. I was on tons of medications after treatment, and this allowed me to get off everything but my thyroid medication.
Wow. That's really great. How many different medications were you on before you moved?
17.
Holy. So you went from 17 to 1?
Yes, just one.
Everybody should move to Vegas with those odds.
Everyone should move to Vegas for the weather.
That's awesome. Well, since you haven't been on a triple negative breast cancer broadcast, I know we talked about doing it back in 2016 when we were back on Blab, which was like a million years ago, and you weren't able to join at that time. But you and I have been a part of a triple negative breast cancer support group for some time now on Facebook, and I see your name go by a lot, and I'm sure you see my name often in there as well. So if you wouldn't mind, tell everybody on the broadcast here exactly what led to your triple negative breast cancer diagnosis.
Well, I had my son in July of 2011, and my mom, ever since the time I about started my period, always had me do a self-breast exam. A week after, you're supposed to do them a week after your cycle, which most people don't realize, because your hormones are balanced out after then. And I did them religiously my whole life, and my son had just turned 1, and I did one and I felt something, and I knew automatically what it was.
Wow.
And I was blessed to have a doctor who actually believed me, who didn't say, oh, hey, it's just a swollen milk duct. I mean, I had a 1-year-old and a 2-year-old at home. I was only 27. Most doctors kind of brush it off.
Yeah, you're right.
And I was blessed that he believed in me and said, okay, let's go get a mammogram and an ultrasound and see what's going on. And it was a whirlwind. Within 2 weeks, I had my diagnosis, and within 3 weeks, chose to have a double mastectomy.
Wow.
And they didn't want to. I was the youngest at the time in Utah that had been diagnosed within a good period of years.
Wow.
So they rushed me through the process, and I'm very, very grateful for that. It was overwhelming, but I'm grateful that they trusted my gut. And that's what I tell the women in my support group. You know your body better than no doctor does.
Right.
And you know your body better than anyone can give you advice for.
Yeah.
So you got to trust it and go with it.
It's so true. I was actually listening back to one of our broadcasts 2 years ago where we were interviewing, I think her name was Christina Flack, and she was talking about how when she got diagnosed, she just literally just felt different. Like it wasn't anything specific, but she felt like something was off, and she just didn't feel good. She was like lower energy, just like something seemed weird. And that's what kicked off the whole thing that led to her breast cancer diagnosis, was being so in tune with her own body. And it's like what you said, it's being familiar with yourself, knowing your body, knowing when something's not right, like you did.
I've always had health issues my whole life and so I think I better knew. But like you had said, Christina said, feeling, most people don't realize a lack of energy, random pains, even migraine headaches are sometimes symptoms because it throws your hormones out of whack.
Right. Wow. That's crazy. So when you had your double mastectomy, did you do reconstruction or no?
I chose to have expanders put in, and then I chose to have very, very, very smaller implants than my breasts were originally.
Gotcha.
And I was one that was like, okay, I was going to have a reduction done anyways.
Right.
But like you said earlier in the broadcast, they don't look like a boob job. They don't. They are very far between. But, I'm alive, so I'll be grateful I have something right now. But
Yeah. So, you heard me talking to Courtney earlier, and we were both talking about how we don't have any feeling. Or do you lack feeling in your breast as well?
I do, and I also have the dog ears you were talking about. And what the hard thing is right now I have implants that are recalled.
Oh, no.
And they will not remove them unless I have symptoms.
Wow.
Because the FDA says it's more of a risk to remove them than to replace them, which is extremely frustrating having to figure out how to go about that and finding a doctor who will do that.
Oh, wow. That's rough, man. That whole dog ear thing is totally and completely new to me. Like I've never heard that term before. Probably the last 3 weeks, I bet.
It's very common. The hard part is when you're talking about the bras and stuff, it's finding bras. I work out about 6-7 days a week, and finding sports bras that don't rub with, it's about an extra 2 inches of skin. And it's very inconvenient and not exactly the prettiest thing to look at.
Yeah, wow. That's awful. Yeah, like I said, I've heard a lot of women in that group. I believe it's called Flatties United, and they talk about it all the time. I've been learning so much. You would have thought that I would have joined that group like 10 years ago, but I didn't even really know about it, and I just kind of ran across it recently when somebody commented from that group, and I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's really good to know. So after you had your double mastectomy, did you have chemo?
I had my double mastectomy on August 27th and started chemo on September 17th.
And this was 2012, right?
Yeah, in 2012. So they didn't wait very long for that process for me.
Wow. And so how long was your chemo?
About 7 months. So I did 4 rounds of adriamycin cytotoxin, and then I did 4 condensed rounds of Taxol.
Gotcha.
So what condensed is in certain states you have to get it approved by the medical board.
Wow.
So because I lived in Wyoming at the time, I couldn't go once a week down to Utah for treatment. So they did a 3 weeks worth of Taxol at one time, and it was brutal.
Wow, that does sound brutal. What were some of the side effects that you encountered?
Bone pain was a major side effect that I had, but the worst part is they don't tell you the lasting side effects, the ones that have still come to fruition as I get older that I didn't realize. Like we were talking earlier about hearing loss.
Oh, right. Mm-hmm.
Dental. I mean, I lost all my teeth.
All your teeth?
And I lost all but 5.
Wow.
And
what did which chemo did they attribute that to?
It's attributed to Taxol.
Wow. Did you think it had anything to do with the massive amounts they were giving you all at once?
They've attributed part of that, and also the younger you are when you go through Taxol treatment, it's been proven the more severe your long-term side effects can be.
Wow. I had no idea of that. That's scary.
Yeah. Arthritis is a big one that people see, and just stuff like that.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, when I think of the different types of things that I've had, as a result of chemo, like long-term effects, I think the biggest one was after chemo, my periods were just all messed up. Like I was like no periods for a long time. Then it was like I would have one like every 8 weeks or every 2 weeks. It was just like all over the map. And then I finally just went into full-on menopause, which I went into early. I was diagnosed at 41. And so I went into full-on menopause probably maybe 2 years ago. So like 48, something like that. So I was a little bit earlier than probably I would have been. That's the main one. And you and I were talking about the hearing loss earlier, and my audiologist had told me with my hearing loss that, I'm a drummer, and so in my left ear, I'm losing high frequency hearing that is environmental hearing loss. But in my right ear, I'm losing across all frequencies, and it's actually worse in my right ear now than it was in my left. My left was like messed up since like 98 or something like that, a long time. But this is new, and it has happened since chemo, but no one has said anything about there being a correlation to that, and you really have me wanting to look into that now. It's really interesting. Are both of your ears affected?
Both of my ears are affected. My right ear, I had a bone-anchored hearing aid implant put in, which has been
yeah.
So it's attached. I have a magnetic implant put in right behind my right ear, and then I have a device like a cochlear implant, but it's on the outside, and it allows me to hear, and it's amazing. It's
that
a
is
huge,
amazing.
huge blessing.
I mean, hearing aids in of themselves. I was telling you I wear hearing aids. I'm wearing my hearing aids right now, and it's really amazing how much you can pick up with your hearing aids, and you would never imagine that it could fix that much of it. It's crazy. Really cool.
Well, and how much you're missing when you don't have them in.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Wow. So do you have kids or a husband, or how's that been on your family?
I do.
I mean, your chemo or your cancer diagnosis, how was that on your family?
It was hard on my husband at first. He was always there for me. I was very lucky. Not very many women are that lucky. He had a great job, so he had great insurance. I have a vascular disease, so I'm also on Social Security disability. So I was double insured, and even with the double insurance, it still took a huge financial hit, which people don't realize.
You're right.
And then I was lucky. My kids were barely 1 and 2.5 when I was diagnosed, so they don't remember a lot.
Yeah. Well, that's good. And so how are you, other than, so you've got the hearing loss and some other things that you mentioned, but in your day-to-day life, do you think about triple negative breast cancer that much anymore? Is it still come to mind a lot? How's it affected like your outlook and that kind of thing?
With my outlook, I've kind of pushed it into the term like you have, helping others. I started my support group on Facebook the week after I finished chemo, and I got my NAD, they call it a certificate where the hospital I went through.
Yeah, and for those watching, NAD is no evidence of disease. So that means she doesn't have any evidence of cancer in her body when they give you that.
I met one of my greatest friends, Jennifer, the first day we started chemo, and the exact same day, 2 chairs apart from each other. And we started the triple negative breast cancer survivor support group on Facebook. And because they didn't tell us, hey, what's next after treatment?
Right.
They just kind of throw you out into the world and say, hey, we'll see you in 3 months.
Yeah.
They don't educate you on, what lifestyle changes you should make, or, hey, is this anxiety normal?
Right.
Are these emotions okay? And so we started this Facebook group, and it's been amazing. We have women from 55 countries.
Wow. How many members do you guys have right now?
We have 3 different groups, and we have about 3,600 total.
That's great.
And then I also run my mentor, Ginger Johnson. She was the one who encouraged me to start this support group. She was the founder of Happy Chemo, and that she passed away last year.
Oh, no.
And she said, in order to get through the next few years, she said, you need to serve other people. Forget yourself and go to work, she told me.
Right. Well, I mean, it's a really good point. I know that that's what I've been drawn to do for sure. And those Facebook groups, man, those are amazing. That's been a really helpful thing for me over the last few years. I've learned a lot from, watching other conversations or getting involved in other conversations. And, I'm hoping that when I share my story, I know when you share your story, it's helping people just like this right now. At the point of talking about social media, I want to stop for a second and remind everybody that we have a really cool thing going on tonight during this broadcast. If we get 50 or more shares during the broadcast, which is between now and 10 p.m. Central, we have an anonymous donor who will donate $500 to the Triple Negative Breast Cancer Foundation. So that's super cool. Be sure and share this broadcast, not only for that reason, but because we want to share and educate folks on triple negative breast cancer, a rare and aggressive form of breast cancer that affects 10 to 15% of all women diagnosed. So, Traci, when you got that call, I don't think we actually went into that. When you got that call that you had triple negative breast cancer, that was the first time you heard the term triple negative breast cancer, right?
Right. I had no idea. I had a feeling it was breast cancer. So it didn't shock me that it was, but I had no option. Like, I was like, what? What is this? Like,
yeah. What was your first step? Did you get online? Did your doctor give you more information when they provided you the diagnosis, or how did you learn more about what triple negative breast cancer was?
I got online, which I wish I wouldn't have, to be honest. And I tell women in my group after they've been diagnosed, stay offline. When I went to my doctor, like 2 days after I got the call, they kind of sat down and went over it. But they went over it in a way that wasn't so scary as the internet.
Right. Well, I was actually on the Triple Negative Breast Cancer Foundation's page earlier today, and they have a really cool place where you can download some PDFs with a lot of information about triple negative breast cancer. It is super scary, but there's a lot that's been done in that realm. And I mean, we're sitting here today. You're about 8 years out from your diagnosis. I'm almost 10 years out from mine. And so there's a lot being done. So it is good to know and understand what's happening so that you do make the correct moves for yourself. But do keep in mind that there's a lot being done, and there's a lot of triple negative breast cancer survivors out there. So I always recommend visiting a very reputable source if you do get on the internet. Triple Negative Breast Cancer Foundation for triple negative breast cancer is like the best place you can really go. So I really recommend people checking that out. Did you ever visit their site when you were going through that?
I have visited their site multiple times, and their new PDFs that they have are great.
Yeah.
I think a big thing too is they have like a chat part of their page that you could get onto,
like a community.
And that I think is a huge blessing, because there's some really, really long-term survivors. Like, there's one lady in my group who's at 40 years.
Wow.
And so I have, if people are newly diagnosed, they want to hear those stories. And I think the longer out we go, the more we share, hey, I'm this far out, I have a great life. This hasn't affected that much.
Right.
I think if we share the successes, it makes the scary part a little less so.
Yeah, in joining those groups, like not too long after you're diagnosed, it really does help a lot. I know you're in a lot of the same groups that I'm in for triple negative breast cancer, and I see people all the time, hey, I was just diagnosed last week, I'm scared, I've been told this, and everybody just bonds together and jumps in there and really motivates and encourages those new people who've been diagnosed. And I think it's a really, really great space for people to get together to have that support. I mean, it's so important to have that when you're going through triple negative breast cancer, especially just because it's such a scary diagnosis compared to other breast cancers out there.
Right, and we need to make it not so scary anymore. I think that's the thing. People are putting this stigma on it, and I've seen as the stigma's stayed, our community has gotten closer and stronger.
That's a good point. That's a very good point. We are really lucky in how many years we are beyond our diagnosis. There's still a lot to be done in the realm of finding a cure for breast cancer and especially for triple negative breast cancer, but there's a lot of work being done. So we're really happy for all those groups out there. I know I've got another friend who's battling triple negative breast cancer right now, who's stage 4, and she's going through a lot. I'm not going to say her name right now, but you know who you are, and we love you, and we want to send you a ton of hope and encouragement as you're going through that. I was really hoping she could join the show this evening, and I'm hoping we can get her on at some point this year, because I think it's important not to just show folks like myself and you, Tracy, that are doing great outside of, now that we've gotten so many years beyond our diagnosis and been cancer-free for so long, but also to remind people that there are still people out there struggling that need help. And that's kind of the point of this whole broadcast is bringing awareness and education about triple negative breast cancer, and remind you guys that we get 50 shares tonight, y'all. We've got an anonymous donor who's going to donate $500 to Triple Negative Breast Cancer Foundation, who is right there really fighting hard in the front lines against triple negative breast cancer. So again, be sure and share out this broadcast. We're super happy to have Traci here tonight, man. You are such a rock star. We're like so ahead of schedule right now. It feels weird. I don't even know what to do with myself right now. It's awesome. We started late, and we're like, wow, now we're ahead. So we talked about how you were diagnosed. We talked about what it was like getting the call, the chemos that you went through, and where you are now. What do you think, Traci, would be something that you would really want to tell someone who is newly diagnosed? Like, what's some advice that you would give them? I know you mentioned maybe staying offline a little bit and not, falling into the fear factor behind what triple negative breast cancer is. What other kind of advice and encouragement could you provide to those folks?
Well, I had a huge conversation, if you saw on my group a couple days ago, about friends and people losing friends over a diagnosis. And I think the biggest part that we need to realize is the emotional impact of cancer, not only just on us, on those around us, and realizing that people don't know how to react. It's scary yes, we're going through it, but the people around us don't know what to do either.
That's
and
right.
So making sure that we give them the benefit of the doubt and realize that, how do I say this nicely? Our true friends will be there no matter what, but those who are afraid might step back,
Right.
and that's okay.
Yeah, that's a really, really great point. I had some friends, and ironically enough, it was several male friends that after I was diagnosed, they just like disappeared. And, maybe a year after I finished chemo or something, they just like appeared out of nowhere, and they were just like, I'm so sorry I wasn't there for you. I couldn't handle it. And I thought that was so ironic, because, normally when you're talking about men and women, there's this stigma that men are just like strong and they can handle anything and all that. But it was more the men than the women that couldn't handle the emotional aspect of having a friend go through triple negative breast cancer. And you're right, though, giving them the benefit of the doubt is super important, because I definitely wasn't mad at those guys. I had a great support group of friends and stuff around me and family when I went through triple negative breast cancer. And when they came back and apologized, like, hey, man, it's totally cool. I love you. I know you love me. We're totally good. And you're right. People don't exactly know what to do. And I have people ask me all the time. And the thing is what I might want going through breast cancer might not be the same thing that you'd be looking for. So every person is different. You just have to kind of ask them, hey, what do you want? What can I do for you? And like for me, my big thing, I've talked about this a lot on Facebook, is that I didn't want to be alone. Like when I was alone with my thoughts, it was like not a good thing. Like I would just get freaked out, and I would think all this negative thoughts and everything. And so I really wanted to be around people. And so often my friends would just come over and just sit with me and hang out and watch TV. We wouldn't even have to be talking, but just be in the same room. And that helped me. But that's not for everybody. Some people prefer to be alone. They don't want to be around people. They just want to chill, and they just want to be alone with their thoughts and just kind of chill out, and that works for them. So it's really good to ask the person, hey, what can I do for you? What do you need? I got meals. I remember getting socks with aloe vera in them, and those were awesome. Going through chemo, things like that, comforting things like, snuggly blankets and that kind of stuff are really good. But if you're a caretaker, a friend of somebody going through breast cancer or any kind of cancer for that matter, just ask them what they want and tell them, you're there for them, and ask them what they want, whether it's emotional or a new pair of socks. You never know.
You don't. I had a friend who just decided to take initiative, and she took me to chemo when my husband had to work. And that she didn't even ask. She said, "We're going to chemo, and where do you want to go for lunch after?"
Oh, that's
like
so
she
cool.
Just and just little things, and treating those who are newly diagnosed the same way that you'd want to be treated even though you weren't diagnosed.
Right. Exactly. Yep. That's a really great point. Well, girl, I feel like we covered a lot of ground with you today, and we've actually been chatting for almost a half hour already. So,
Oh, wow.
you have any final thoughts for those watching tonight?
I've been working in the triple negative field for 7 years now, and the biggest thing I can say is I've seen so many advances in treatment and successes with people's recovery, and I've seen stage 4 life expectancies increase tremendously. And I think, there's so much hope to go around that if we continue to put the money where it needs to be, when we were first diagnosed, there was very few chemos that worked. And now we're looking at 15 that are protocol for triple negative.
That's crazy, isn't
and
it?
that when we were going through chemo, there was 4. And so if we increased, what we give for research and how we put our money where our mouth is for awareness, and that, the person next to you could be diagnosed, and if they're diagnosed 5 years from now, if we spent the money where it needed to be, they could be alive because we funded what had to happen in order to make sure our friends and our brothers and our sisters are alive.
Yep, that's awesome. Man, girl, thank you so much, and thank you for what you do for the triple negative breast cancer community with your Facebook pages and your Facebook groups. It's just amazing that you've turned a negative into a positive like that, and I know that there are many women out there that really appreciate you. So thank you so much for joining, Traci. It's finally we got to talk. I'm so glad.
I know, right? It's been way too long. And thanks for always being there for me when I need you.
Oh, man, I'm there for you, man, always. And have fun out there in Vegas. When I'm out there again, I'll have to look you up, okay?
Okay, anytime. I'd love to meet you face to face.
Me too, girl. You take care, okay?
Okay, thanks, April.
Awesome. Man, Traci's a rock star. We've had some amazing stuff together